the recording. And Aviv, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Glad to see everybody here after a few technical difficulties, which I guess are the new thing we should expect nowadays when we switch conferences to online. I want to ask everybody to mute themselves. If you're not on mute, let's try to just have the speaker on because there's a little bit of background noise. Daniel, that means you too. Maybe I should tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Aviv Zohar. For those who don't know me, I'm a researcher at the Hebrew University. I'm also the chief scientist at Keynote, a company who's also sponsoring ZKProof, and I'm a member of the steering committee. And it's my honor to welcome you all to the home edition of ZKProof. For those who are here for the first time, we are an open initiative that seeks to get zero knowledge proofs into the mainstream. And what we're trying to do is develop an inclusive community-driven standard process. This is pretty much our mission statement, as you can see it on the zkproof.org website. And as you probably imagine, we've all had to adapt, like everybody else, to the COVID-19 pandemic. We were supposed to have a workshop in London, and we switched, as you all know, to an online event. I'm sure this has been disrupting all of your lives, not just ours, probably for some in very serious ways. I think one thing that I would like to say is that even under this threat to public health and to the economy, which is really a global threat, our mission is as relevant as ever. There is a large movement to, even nowadays, to undermine privacy, and we know and understand, I think, that even under these circumstances, we have to preserve privacy, and that we can do so without a large cost to public health and to economic consequences. So part of the stuff that we do here, standardizing zero knowledge proofs, supports this main thrust, I suppose. So now everybody knows that one of our favorite ways to explain zero knowledge proofs is to use Waldo. We might have to find a different example, because nowadays even Waldo can't be within 2 meters of other people, so he's very easy to spot. Nobody will get the explanation in a generation or so. So we have to start looking, I guess. So there's more adapting to do. I want to share with you a little bit about the background of this workshop. I'll do this quickly so we can get to content. But we did used to have physical events. This is our first one. This was in MIT. You see a group of, I think, some 80 participants were there. We later had an event in Berkeley with more and more people. And this year is supposed to be our third event. In the meantime, we've also had some workshops, one in Amsterdam, some appearances in ZCon and other conferences. And nowadays, I guess we're switching to group meetings and group photos that will look more like this in the future. We're going to have one, actually. I think Daniel will give you all the details later. Before we start with the content, I really want to say thanks to all of our sponsors who stuck with us through these changes to the workshop, specifically to IOHK, the Keynote, and the Zcash Foundation, who are our platinum sponsors. We've got a lot of other sponsors as well, so it's great to see this initiative is being supported by a lot of industry as well. Another thanks goes out to the steering committee members who have helped out and stuck with us through pretty much from the first event, and have helped organize this entire endeavor and lead it. And maybe a very big thanks to Daniel Benarosh and to Yao Benor, who are with us on this call. You'll be seeing a lot of them on this workshop on these days. And I'm actually going to hand it over to them. I should say before that they've been amazing at switching this event from a physical one to an online one. We really want to give you this sensation of having a physical event as much as we can. We know online events are a poor substitute for the physical thing, but this is what we can do right now. So maybe some of you have received these care packages that we've sent out, and this is mainly Daniel and Yao's work behind the scenes to make everything work as smoothly as possible. So I'm gonna hand it over to them, and I hope you enjoy the workshop and all the events to come.
Thank you, Aviv. Now I'm going to share my screen. Indeed, we are very excited to have you here. I will add to Aviv's thanks, Antoni. So she's working with the Zcash Foundation. She's also helped us quite a lot throughout the transition, and especially with the packages. So thanks to Antoni as well. I wanted to give you briefly a bit of background and context on ZKProof before we jump into the first session. So throughout the last 3 years, the community has developed a lot of content within the effort to educate and to guide the industry. So we started, I guess, with the ZKProof community reference. Now you see that we published the 0.2 version in December, but this started much earlier. This is a guideline and reference covering from security, implementation, and applications of zero-knowledge proof. We have the newly established wiki or resources page, which contains all of the documentation related to ZKProof. And in the future, it will also have other documents to support researchers and other educational resources. We have started several educational initiatives to enable non-cryptographers to join the community. So one of them is the guest blog post series of The Art of Zero Knowledge, and this webinar that we have ongoing for the fundamentals of zero knowledge as well. We aim to welcome as many people as possible in the community. All the content that we create in ZKProof is licensed under Creative Commons, so it's free to use, and it can all be accessed in the wiki, so the docs.zkproof.org. So how did we get there, right? One step at a time, of course. The first workshop for us was more of an experiment. Everybody that was there was asking kind of the same question, what is this effort? There were 70 researchers trying to agree on some of the most basic issues around zero knowledge, starting from terminology. And to our surprise, it was quite a success. We created, all of the participants produced 3 documents, one on security, one on implementation, and one on applications. And these are the documents that became the basis of the reference document that we know today. During the second workshop, we wanted to scale, both in numbers and in quality. We wanted to continue building this thing that we felt was important. And we opened the first call for proposals. We had 150 participants, so we basically doubled in participation. And there were around 7 submissions for the call for proposals, and 4 papers were accepted. This was also the first time that we collaborated with an external organization, which was specifically NIST, to create the version 0.1 of the reference document. And I'll say a little bit more about this in a second. And today, we are at the 3rd ZKProof workshop. As Aviv explained, with some bumps in the road, but we are here. Today I checked, last time I checked, there were actually 250 participants, and I guess we may go up even. After 2 years, more than 2 years and 5 events, there's a clear interest from the industry to create standards and to make this technology, to get adoption from this technology, right? We know in part because of the interest that we see, but also because we had a total of 23 submissions this year, of which 12 of the papers were accepted, right? If you've seen the schedule, we have specifically 9 proposals and 3 systematization of knowledge papers. We, as I said, we published the version 0.2 of the reference document, which we'll also talk about throughout the workshop, right? This workshop does also come with a little bit of an experiment, which is that it's the first time that we have set up sort of these working groups to enable the proper development of the proposals into standards. We are still building right upon our original work, which is the reference document. So specifically speaking about the reference document, with the help of the PEC team, the Privacy Enhancing Cryptography team at NIST, who initially actually put together the LaTeX version of the 3 documents that we were talking about. We published in December the 0.2 version, which actually contains a lot of improvements. It extends several of the sections and improves the content from many contributors. And we very much appreciate the dedication of the team, which actually specifically it's Luis, Rene, and Angela, who have been very engaged in the development. Luis is also an editor of the ZKProof reference document, as well as Eran and myself. But of course, NIST is not the only organization building standards, right, for advanced cryptography. So there is sort of this trend that we're seeing in the last maybe 2 or 3 years, which is to create standards based on kind of communities, right? So communities are the ones that are agreeing upon this way to do secure and interoperable cryptography. So the Homomorphic Encryption Organization just recently published a paper with their first kind of agreed upon specification of a standard. The MPC Alliance kicked off late last year, I believe, and they may go into some path of standardization. And of course, there is the IETF, which we all know pretty well because it's sort of a pillar of the cryptography community by now. But it was one of the first ones, one of the first efforts to be community-driven for standardization, right? So what will we do this year to advance this effort? Our goals are still to foster adoption, to educate the community, to support the research, and to generate more interest in the technology, broadly speaking. And as I mentioned, for the first time, the accepted proposals have entered this standardization path, right? We have these discussions to improve the proposals, and we are working with the steering committee and other advisors to define this process, but we will publish a call for feedback so that the community can also put their input. And for now, we have these working groups which are in charge of defining the scope and the goals of the draft proposals. Though even if the steering committee or other committees may review these proposals, we believe that further work with other standard bodies may be needed in order to formally create a standard. In terms of the reference document, we've decided to add the systematization of knowledge that were accepted into the appendix of the reference document as a growing document in terms of content. We are working towards version 1.0 to publish it formally as a reference documentation of ZKProof, and we welcome contributions from everybody in the community. We very much encourage them. And of course, we will host several more events, as Aviv was saying. So this was about the context and motivation. Now let's quickly see just what is about this year's event. As Aviv was also explaining, we span the workshop into 5 weeks, twice a week. So Mondays and Thursdays, you're going to have 3 hours every day. And we're going to use different tools, so Zoom, HackMD. We ask you to just be respectful, to not interrupt the speakers, to raise your hand using the feature on Zoom, and so on. And you can ask questions on the chat, so feel free to do that. There is a couple of moderators that are driving the sessions. We do encourage everyone to turn on their camera if you are okay with that, just so that we have a bit more of an engaging experience. But do turn off your microphone if you're not speaking, right? I'm not going to give one of these movie videos to be silent, but you know the drill. And we also have these code of conduct and discussion and guidelines proposals that you can find in the link right here below. So I encourage you to do that. And we look forward to all of your contributions. So again, the only link that, or URL that I would say you need to remember for the whole workshop is this specific one. So zkproof.org/workshop3 links, because this is going to be updated regularly. It contains all the permanent links and all the ones for the different sessions. Well, enjoy the discussions, and I hope you can make connections as if you're in the physical event. So I'm just gonna quickly present the session and session chairs and moderators of today. That's Mariana Raikova and Eran Tromer. So Mariana is a cryptography researcher at Google with many important seminal works in the space of zero knowledge, such as the PHGR that introduced the Pinocchio protocol. She's also an important contributor to the ZKProof effort and has been in both of the reviewing committees for the last 2 workshops. Eran is a professor at Columbia and Tel Aviv University and also one of the pioneers of efficient protocols and applications of zero knowledge. He's in the steering committee of the ZKProof effort and is also an editor of the reference document. So Mariana and Eran, please take the stage.
Thank you very much, Daniel. So I'm Eran Tromer, and I will be your moderator together with Mariana today. It is our pleasure to present the first speaker, keynote speaker, Moti. Moti is a security and privacy research scientist with Google and an adjunct senior research faculty at Columbia University. And he has an interesting life story. In the early 80s, he got the cryptographer academic research virus and has been infected ever since. In 85, he was exposed to the zero knowledge pandemic and was then contaminated with the industrial cryptographer bug. Then his infection has become systemic and now includes coverage of the field from the foundations to industrial deployments. He admits to having violated social distancing and therefore having collaborated with over 300 colleagues, students, postdocs, and engineers. And on the way, he has contributed to theory, foundations, innovations, and to our deep understanding of cryptography, as well as to practice and actual systems used daily. He does admit, however, that beside the cryptography becoming the foundations of security for the internet, mobile, and cloud computing, and beyond the many awards and recognitions he has collected, he also recognizes that cryptography is a very nice way for people to have meaningful careers in science and technology. He welcomes this novel opportunity to infect others with his mind virus over this supposedly secure channel. Moti, go ahead. You are muted.
Thank you very much. I will share my screen and I will go directly to the talk. So I was debating with myself what to talk about. And at some point I wanted to talk about the most recent application papers, and I have 2 that use extensively zero knowledge. But later on I realized that this talk is about practice, and I'm going to give a talk which is on the very practical end of my work, and zero knowledge to the rescue. This is the title of the talk. And you know, everybody's to the rescue, Superman and so on. So of course, it's the time that to acknowledge that zero knowledge can also come handy at time of trouble. So I'll give partial history. I assume people either know it or can read it, but you know, it started with Goldwasser Mikali and Rakov, GMR, in Stock 85. Both zero knowledge and interactive proofs were presented, and immediately it was obvious, to some people at least, that it's a great notion because it's like it hit two birds with one stone. It was an advancement in complexity theory, which it was extending the notion of NP, adding randomness interaction to proof system, and interaction between a prover and a verifier trying to prove a statement. it gave the class of IP what is interactively provable. And at the same time, it was a major contribution to the theory of cryptography, integrity without showing secrets, you know, something kind of magical. And the people that were active at that time and understood the greatness of it immediately realized that, you know, this is something to explore from either side. And indeed, the year after, I had my first paper on zero knowledge. And there are many implications. It really revolutionized both complexity and cryptography, many results, characterization of IP, and the other kind of proof systems and so on, and in cryptography, efficient protocol with constant rounds and non-interactive proofs, CS proofs and similar notions, and many efficient protocols in various models, with simpler assumptions, with more complicated assumptions, with unbelievable assumptions, in the sense that people don't believe them, and so on. So other models, concurrent, parallel, and so on. So it gave a room for research, which was really huge. And of course, in cryptography, it had implications to other cryptographic primitives because suddenly you had a new tool, and many implications to cryptographic protocols design. So at that time, you know, people could think, what is the value of zero knowledge proofs to cryptography? And you know, you can start thinking and talking with people. You know, it's such a great notion. It must have many applications, many implications, and it's a theoretical tool. So the first thing, naturally, is to see how it is applied, related, and so on to other notions. Remind you, cryptography was not as evolved as now, but nevertheless, it was a field of study already, about a few years. So, question, what you can do? So you can prove possession of a secret. You have a public key, you can prove that you know the secret key. You can prove possession of a secret, and based on some public information and your secret, you can prove, given input, I present a result with this input and some history and whatever I need to compute now. So you can prove properties of ciphertext, keeping the plaintext hidden. You can prove some relations about cryptographic objects in a safe way, so you don't reveal the secrets. This is in general. So these seem to be kind of, in some abstract way, very powerful notions that were not there before, or were very specific and limited at the time. So this was kind of a thought breakthrough in what you can really do in cryptography about validating things or vouching for things while keeping secrets active. So this immediately implied some things like authentication. I possess a secret. Everybody knows I possess the secret, and when I prove that I know the secret, this proof comes for me, so it authenticates me. You can think similarly about interactive signature. I commit to something like a seed of a pseudo-random function. I calculate the PRF over the message, and I prove in zero knowledge that this is actually the result of that seed that I don't tell you on this message. So interesting. You can interactively send a message. if I have a statement that can be like, it's somehow have a few possibilities of proving, I prove to you, you understand the message, what I'm sending. Things like this. So these look like relatives of primitives that existed, authentication and other relatives. So it becomes similar to some primitives. So it can build some primitives, but it's almost there. Many of the things like signature and sending a message are not interactive. Zero knowledge is good, but it's not yet there. But if we have non-interactive zero knowledge, then suddenly, instead of this weird interactive signature that I'm telling you, Goldwasser and Ostrovsky had a signature based exactly on the recipe that I mentioned. And then if you assume the random oracle model, then you can turn authentication in relation to a message to a signature. And these non-interactive zero knowledge are transferable. What you can do with encryption, you can prove properties of ciphertext, which is nice. Immediately you can have a partially hiding message because you prove that some of the message have this property, but nothing more. So if you have semantically secure encryption, on top of it some zero knowledge, so it's nice because you reveal exactly what you want to reveal and the rest is fully hidden. And then that's nice, but you can also do prove things about ciphertext. So that was the first recipe with Moni Naor to try to attack the notion of public key chosen ciphertext security. Proving valid computation, that was great. GMW, Goldreich, Micali, and Wittgerson showed a generic transformation on how you take secure multi-party computation, assuming the parties follow the prescribed protocol, and allow this same secure multi-party computation to be controlled by an adversary that may change the programs of the participants. But since the participants have to prove that given the history, the committed input, and the committed randomness, that they are really following the protocol and the message that they send is consistent with the protocol. Of course, this requires a very heavy proof, but this was the beginning. It was a compiler, a completeness theorem. It used the fact that zero knowledge proofs can be done in zero knowledge. And over the years, of course, secure multi-party computation became more practical. So there was a need to have more practical compilers. And then this gave rise to the efficient zero knowledge proofs that probably this workshop is going to cover a lot, snarks, and all this family. So this shows you the value of this, and it's really great. So we got validity of protocols, not just multi-party computation, but other protocols, integrity of actions, limiting the power of an adversary, so that if there is an adversary, we are bound to find it by forcing it to fail the zero knowledge proof. So it became like an error correct, a malicious error correct detecting code in a sense. And then came anonymity. This is a big area for validity because I need to have an anonymous primitives, anonymity primitives like eCache, like credentials, like group signatures, and I need to prove things about it, but everything is hidden. The parties are hidden. Do I give it to the right party? Do I give a party something without showing them what they get? For example, I do blinding of something and I prove that I blinded it right, and then you take your action, and then I'm blinded. Kind of collaborative computing that generates something that is anonymous. And anonymity is definitely a demand for zero knowledge, obviously, because it's a way to argue about hidden parts. And in anonymity, there are many parts that are hidden. So in this talk, I'm moving all the way to the practice, but I want to give here 2 citations from the same person, Leonardo da Vinci. And he said 2 things. He said, and this is a translation, first he said, A, he who loves practice without theory is like a sailor who board a ship without a compass. Namely, there is no guidance for somebody who is a practitioner without theory. On the other hand, he said, theory without practice cannot survive and dies as quickly as it lives. Because it kind of becomes argument about argument, according to him. So, so when I talk to students, I tell them, if you are interested in theory, remember, always remember B and A. And if you are interested in practice, always remember A and B. So it's good to know. And this leads me to applications in the real world. So zero knowledge proofs are great theoretical work, very meaningful, unique power. They've been for many years. And most of the time, they showed very interesting potential. And this is good. And it was just a matter of time. When is the killer applications going to come? And that's always true. And I'll cover it a little bit later. And when I look at crypto as somebody who works in industry and also in academia, so I look at crypto as having 4 layers, from abstract to actual. Abstract is theory and foundations, where the definitional work and the basic constructions of feasibility, proofs, models, proofs, complexity, calculations, all the theoretical underpinning and foundations. Then there is the applied. Applied looks at system and does very similar to the abstract, but restricts itself to something that is efficient and look implementable. So this is already applied cryptography in the sense of study. And then there is cryptography, which is into applied security, which is a natural state, is creating building blocks and underlying methods for building a security system, like packages that have basic cryptographic operations and working on standards. And I know this group is interested in standards. And then beyond that, or beneath that, doesn't matter. It's not an order here, it's just a list. There's actual cryptographic engineering, which means deploying specialized novel or even old ideas, but deploying them in actual systems so that they actually work. And all, all these 4 areas are very important on their own. And there's no, as I said, the list is just going from the most theoretical to the most practical, but everybody has his own order of importance. I think they're all important. So in current real application, we started to see the usefulness of zero knowledge being manifested in Zcash due to anonymity, or in cryptocurrencies. Even before people talked about mixing payments with zero knowledge proofs and random routing and things like this, and even implemented it and thought about it. And there are a number of these. I'm not going to cover all these. I think in this workshop you will cover it. But definitely in the domain of cryptocurrency, this is one example, but there are many real applications to do it. So the dedicated primitives that require to replace direct exhibition of properties to indirect, and this is definitely a fundamental property of the notion of zero knowledge proofs. And also, it is history always repeats itself, and crypto over time becomes more practical if it is practice oriented. Otherwise, it becomes a deserted branch or something like this. But it's due to computation, Moore's law, and in general, computations becoming more efficient, and the fact that algorithms and protocols improve over time. So they are both the engineering work which makes computation, hardware, and software faster, and the improvement, which also involve, by the way, their own algorithms and their own methods, which are highly interesting, and algorithmic improvements and new ideas within the realm of cryptography. So when I joined the field, RSA and exponentiation in general and Diffie-Hellman at the start was not practical, could not run on a PC. And there was a need to build co-processors, and many co-processors, people attempted co-processors in industry and academia, and even those were too slow for the technology of their time. I once presented a paper on public key implementation on smart card. And at the end of the talk, somebody came and said, which smart card in the world is going to implement public key cryptography? I said, this is research. In a couple of years, there will be. So similarly with zero knowledge, we have seen the development towards improving the protocols. So when we go into deployment, either we are going to take something which needs real-time online requirements, and then you have to use the performance. You need the performance. You need to minimize cycles of delay. So you're going to use the efficient one, and you're going to maybe relax the model or relax the assumption, and you're going to get it. Or the other idea, and when you look for applications for something that is perhaps a bit heavy, you look for settings where moderate performance is enough, like offline computations and things like this. So this is the state of zero knowledge. Multi-party computation, by the way, is on its way to practice. Of course, special applications already exist. And this is a great enhancement, a great expansion of cryptography. And I think it was mentioned before that there are now communities and communities of people who want to practice this, put it in system, build companies, And this is really a stage of maturity of modern cryptography, because all these notions came up during the era which we call modern cryptography. I'm sure in 100 years, other people will call it classical cryptography, and they'll call what they do modern, but for now, it's modern cryptography. So now they jump to practice. So actual composed systems need integrity, and if they involve secrets, they need integrity that does not divulge, they don't give away the secrets. So it's not just that dedicated crypto protocols need zero knowledge, but also if you start building a system and you have a step in which you, let's say you produce keys, and then you distribute the keys, and then you prove things about the keys, and then you use the keys to anonymously authenticate yourself in a larger protocol. So you start combining things, and then you rely on security protocols, yet on certain composability that is typical of system, that you have stages. You need this integrity assurance. In sometimes it's open. You can see signature is used a lot of time to provide this in certain systems, but not always you can use signature. Not always you want to use signature. Not always you want to include non-repudiation in your protocol and things like this. So how do you jump from a system that needs integrity and jump from these more theoretical notions of zero knowledge and embed them in actual systems? So this is where what I call zero knowledge to the rescue. And there's a question mark. Is it needed? So the truth is that for years I tried to incorporate zero knowledge proofs just to understand the needs. But many times there is a cheaper natural alternative. Like I want to know that two people hold the same key. The typical thing to do is challenge response protocol, like challenging on random elements, and the other guy answers, and it matches your encryption. You do it a couple of times, and you know that you share the same key. So that's a cheap alternative to do it. You can do authentication if you share a secret key that authenticates you in closed system, and sometimes you can do challenge response there. There are all these things, but and it's very bad for a practitioner just to impose a notion on a problem. You need to have a problem that will exhibit the need or the needs naturally, because otherwise it comes out very clumsy, because you need the most effective, the most acceptable, the fastest to develop primitive. And it's interesting, in more theoretical papers, even papers with demonstration, people were doing it for zero knowledge, simplifying over the years, and I try to do it in systems. And I worked on relatively big systems like worldwide auctions or end-to-end encryption. You know, those things go billions of times a day. Content distribution with encryption, or a national lottery system. And in this system, per need, there was a need for sophisticated cryptography here and there, but different sophistication. And for example, in the lottery system, I could spend a lot of money because this system makes a lot of money. So the money went to a lot of security mechanisms, including, I think it was the first implementation of forward secure signature. Why? Because there's always a risk management component that somebody is working to break your signature. So you immediately prepare the next signature. So you force the adversary to chase after you and things like this. But zero knowledge was not needed, though it is a distributed system. There is a communication. There is a lot of collaboration, but somehow it wasn't used. But it is impossible that in working system there is no need ever for zero knowledge, because it's something that connects two things. It connects secrecy with assurance of integrity, with assurance. And it must be, as people noticed with using it for anonymous mechanism, anonymous transfers, for example. So at some point, I was between long-term works. So one of the things that I like to do when I am between jobs is to get some extra work. So I was consulting in a project that was about backup storage and backup of symmetric crypto keys in a setting of sensitive cryptocurrency exchange and wallet hosting company. So I thought that would be interesting to this crowd, which is has crypto in the sense of cryptocurrency. And this was needed to be built and run for real, to protect real assets. So what happened in such settings of exchanges and wallet hosting companies in the past? So there is the Mt. Gox 2014 incident, when suddenly a lot of money got missing and they got into bankruptcy and many people lost their money. And in 2019, I think, or 18, there was the Quadriga CX, the Canadian exchange. I think it's Quadriga EX now because it's an X company. Supposedly the CEO died and the keys to their storage were gone. So in all these cases, we don't know if there was no system integrity or simply there was no integrity, namely in the company. We don't know if the CEO died or just disappeared in India with a lot of money. And if you are running, if you want to run a reputable, sustainable business, you cannot afford all this. This is just, you know, these are games that, these are con artists who do things and they steal money, and this is not really the way to go. So the problem to solve is generation of keys and recoveries of keys. So I will not do formal specification here, but is to generate symmetric keys from a distributed set of generators to avoid single point of failure, which can be either leakage or randomness, which is not trusted. And then to keep the keys secure as long as one of the key generators is honest. So this is redundancy, which adds to integrity. And then you don't want the keys to disappear because they are being used for this sensitive protection of a lot of money. So you want to distribute the keys to subset of recovery agents, to agents. Some of them are going to be working with the key and discarding it, and some of them are going to keep it as trustees for backup. And you have to make sure, of course, against integrity, when you have a backup, doesn't matter where you get the backup from because there is redundancy in the backup. The same key is produced independently of which recovery agent you use. And of course, each recovery agent can be a hardware machine, can be in itself a distributed threshold cryptographic quorum behind it and things like this. And this part was done with the Gemini people, Champaya and Daniel James. So the common approach is like this. You do distributed key generation. This procedure is known, and there are efficient procedures in the literature how to do distributed key generation for symmetric key and for other keys. And then you distribute the key rather than to a single holder, you can distribute it to a set of many holders. You just repeat the distribution. And then you can run, okay, you do it, and then you can run challenge response, as I said before, with each holder and verify that you get the same responses. Assuming one is honest, then all of them hold the same keys, and you have the assurance. You know, these people, once they hold it, they assume to be trusted. I'm not giving here the full model, but it's more like I'm telling you stories. But you can imagine that there is a model behind it, and an adversary, and all this. When, you know, when elements in the system behave in a funny way, it's not when they cheat, but it's though they can do, this element can be added, but it's when they somehow don't get the same, not hold the same key. So I suggested this, and then because I was consultant, I didn't know the entire architecture, but I started to get hints about the architecture. So they told me, you know, in generation time, it may be the case that not all recovery agents are online. So you have some recovery agents. Some of them are actually operating agents, we don't distinguish between them. But some of them are offline. Some of them are, for example, there may be a secure hardware module that is offline on purpose because it is kept in cold storage because you don't want to, the keys that it already holds to be online for a long time because you're afraid that because the keys there are in plain text and you don't want to expose the repository of keys and things like this. So if you require for generation to bring them online for challenge response, it actually can make the system more vulnerable. Somebody can say, oh, I want to generate a key when he is preparing actually an attack on the repository of keys. So these things are interesting, and you build it for mission critical, and you're worried about steps like this. So this gives you, first of all, you need to know it because you need to model exactly the cryptographic setting. And when they told me, no, it's impossible because they are not there, how do I give them the key? My usual answer is that cryptographers never give up. They always try, and we have to try. So you have to change the way of thinking. And the way of thinking is that the parties who deposit the keys will assure the properties. Namely, zero knowledge to the rescue. And this is the part where if I distribute a key to the number of elements. I have to keep the key security. They are not there. I have to put it on a public medium, on a bulletin board. With blockchain, you can do it, of course, or internal company bulletin board. And you need to keep it secure when it's not being used, and definitely not when it's being recovered. So what is I give you a little bit moral of the story here. The DR system, here key generation and redundant consistent recovery with offline key holders, where zero knowledge seems to be a must. I don't know other way to do it. And this was really a ha-ha moment for me, because I said, oh yeah, of course. When you have these type of constraints, then there is, when you try to design a new system, sometimes the adversary is already there in the design step. Oh, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, you cannot, you have to stand on one foot and hold your hand behind the back, and then design the system. But then you have to use the right tools, and suddenly zero knowledge, which look like, oh, I can use other methods, not suddenly it's a must. So this is a major point of this talk, with the fact that by solving this with many key generators and many key holders, we doing it this way, we achieve reliability and prevent single point of failure, both in the generation and in the recovery. And we have the right flexibility about not bringing all the agents all at the same time to be online. And this was important. Suddenly, I didn't know how to solve integrity in this scenario, because it has to rely on the depositing parties and not on the receiving parties. That was new for proving equality of keys. So, of course, we will use public keys to hide the symmetric key and to do the distribution. And we had a choice of which public keys to use. We use public key elliptic curves with a common generator to all the recovery agents. This can be done. And a ciphertext will be RS, where R is K times G, multiplication on the curve, and S is K times Y, plus the message. It's just El Gamal in the additive notation over elliptic curves. All the group notations are out. It's not being done over the integers, don't worry. Just that I assume that you take it as a shorthand kind of notations. I omit the algebra. And given a ciphertext, this is there is a property that you can add two ciphertexts component-wise, and you get the encryption of the sum. It's there's additive homomorphism doing the addition this way. So then we design what we called highly available distributed key generation, HADKEG. And we really design it for really to work not next year, not in 5 years, but to work as we were designing it. We had M generating parties and N recovery and operational agents. The M generating parties are determined at the generation time, and the N recovery agents may be subset of all the agents that are active in the company. The public keys are El Gamal over the same generator. And we assume this is the subset that is available online for generation. And for recovery, the agents may not be online. So how is this protocol goes? And again, I'm a lot of shortcuts here in the things because I'm telling you a story. I'm not presenting you proofs here. So first, each generation party chooses a share, SJ, and this is what it's going to give to all the agents, to all the recovery agents. So there's generating parties and agents. So SJ is going to give to all the parties. Then they run distributed key generations on these pieces. So each generators, but it has to be encrypted. So encrypt to the N agent the same piece. And you know there are variants of the protocol, like you first commit to it, everybody commits, then you open, then it depends on the assumption if they are alive there for enough time. You know that they are going to open it. So these are operational requirements. I came up with a few protocols and then we chose the one that most fits the architecture. Key generations are known. In phase 2, each key generator produces a transferable NISC, and we did the simplest one. Actually, not in the Fiat Shamir spirit, actually a Schnorr proof to put on the bulletin board, claiming all its encrypted shares to the different recovery agents are the same value. So, and so you have multiple encryption of M, the message, the SJ, as I said before. And this is secure and giving the same value to all recovery agents. And there is a proof of equality of ciphertext. And so for each pair QI, Q1, let's, in this example, Q2, the following computation is done. Q2 minus Q1 is K times Y2 minus Y1. And what there is a need to prove is that log base G of P, which is K, is also the log based Y2 minus Y1 of Q2 minus Q1. Very simple, and this is known. So it's not, I'm not talking about new techniques for zero knowledge, it's about the applications. And can be proved. And you see that the
please conclude in 2 minutes.
Yes. What? 2 minutes? My goodness, I started late. So, but I will do it. So you get this 4-tuple, which is like, reminds you of the Diffie-Hellman key exchange tuple, which is exactly the DDH challenge. So we do the Schnorr step non-interactively with the hash. And then there is a Schnorr proof. I guess this talk is going to be online, so I'm not going to give the details. And this is repeated for all the keys. And then there is phase 3, in which when the key holders, the agent, wake up, they collect all their shares. They know who are, the architecture tell them who are the generating parties. They pick the shares. They multiply, they kind of add the ciphertext, and they get the addition of the shares. So they are guaranteed that this share, assuming one honest generator, is a good key. So N and M are relatively small in the architecture, so this works very well. There was no need to do batch proofs. There was no need to do anything fancy. There's no need for anything. So let me conclude, because I'm over time. So there are new ways to generate keys. And I think NIST, which holds the framework for cryptographic key generation, should update its framework, and it's up to you guys who are running it, who are working with them, to allow the framework to include zero-knowledge proof procedures and distributed procedures. And zero-knowledge proofs are getting very high importance in various areas, definitely in cryptocurrency, definitely in anonymity, and privacy is getting important. And as I demonstrated, in cases of system integrity, or where there is need for high availability, distribution, and integrity combined with security. Therefore, serious standardization of various procedure is needed. We want to standardize it, and so people do the right thing. We don't want to repeat the mistake of the late 90s when somebody wrote a book full of errors and full of presumptions, and then the entire banking industry repeated the same mistakes. We want to do crypto at large, but do it right. And standardization is definitely a tool. So I'll finish with the purpose of good theory by quoting Boltzmann, who said the task of theory consists in constructing a picture of the external world that exists purely internally. That's the deep theory, and must be our guiding star in all thought and experiments. And experiments in computer science are deployments. And with this, I'll thank you very much.
I am clapping on behalf of the attendants.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Moti. We will stay on schedule for the benefit of the subsequent discussion, meaning that we will resume at 30 minutes past the hour in 7 minutes. But during these 7 minutes, we can continue the discussion, and in particular, if there are any questions to Moti, now is a great time. You can write the question in the group chat, or as long as it's not getting too hectic, just unmute and speak up.
Yeah, it's the first time to have an experience where you give a talk and you don't see the audience. And therefore I decided to give a talk which is more like storytelling rather than lots and lots and lots of technical details. So it will be a nice way to start the workshop. So people know the basic zero knowledge, and I hope you got the gist of the practical importance of this thing. As we speak, it's working.
Yeah, I hope the talk will be online. So when will it be online? Do you know already?
As soon as the recording is available.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Moti, can I ask a question? So how do you build all of these systems with a potential infrastructure where it uses HSMs, and sometimes they're called HSMs, they're not even connected to the internet?
That's exactly why the key generation has to be, so you have to initiate them, yes? And then they have the private key of the public key, and the public key is known. Luckily, it's a blockchain company, so it's not hard to have a bulletin board and the history of what goes on. So when I deposit the key, I put it in the bulletin board together with the non-interactive zero knowledge proof, and then when they come up, and with the right addressing, when they come up, they scan all the history that they didn't scan before. They see all the keys that were sent to them. They collect it inside, and they do the merging and then the decryption, and they check the zero knowledge that it complies with all the other elements, And that's exactly why we needed zero knowledge, because they are not there, they come late, yet they have the whole thing with the generators. I think the generators also sign their things, because they are not anonymous. So that's exactly the difficulty that needed to overcome. And they say, oh, luckily you are here. How do we solve it? I said, oh, you do this, and it's very, very interesting. I said, no, but these are exactly these elements that are not there. Some of them are there because I treated the operational elements that use it and the recovery elements as recovery agents all, because there's no need to differentiate. It's just that the operating guys, they just operate with it. They encrypt things, they raise the key, they go offline. Then the other guys come and somebody needs recovery, they call them, they get the key again. And it's a lot of the recovery here is not recovery for disaster. This is also true, recovery for disaster, but some of the recovery is for security, because you don't want to keep these keys for too long, the elements that are operational. So they raise the key and then they go and recover it. They have permission to recover it just for normal operation. So that's exactly for the value of cold storage. You just bring it up on maybe on a schedule something when you need jobs to do, and schedule it before, and it was verified by the operation. There are other mechanisms for integrity on top of it. Of course, nothing. I mean, this is they tried. Let's say among the people that have that I know who deal with this area, these guys are some of the most serious in the sense of security integrity, as far as I observed. It was a short time to observe them, and it's nice. It's nice that companies take it seriously.
Sorry to interrupt. And what's the status of this work? I mean, is it something that everyone can use, or it's a service that they sell?
No, it's their system. It's in their system. It's not open source. It's in their system. But
time is ripe to conclude this discussion. Thank you again, Moti.
Thank you.
We will set up for the next speaker and start in a minute or two. Thanks again.